This morning, I am super happy to see the face of Tristam Coffin, a longtime partner of Prospect Silicon Valley through a big project that we did together. Was it 4 million years that it took us to get this done, Tristam?
Just shy of 5 million, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but seriously, over the last about 4 years, we embarked on a project to do deep energy retrofits to a Whole Foods market. At the time, Tristam was director of sustainability and facilities for all of California for Whole Foods, and was an incredible partner to us in getting that project off the ground and really created some great impact. So I would love, Tristam, maybe just introduce yourself a bit in your past with Whole Foods and maybe talk a little bit about that project to start off with.
Yeah, happy to introduce myself. Well, Tristam Coffin, now the president of Livingstone Consulting as of April of this year. No better time to start a new career than in the midst of a global pandemic, but cautiously optimistic about the future. And I talk a bit about that here today. Spent 12 years with Whole Market, a number of different capacities working on sustainability, both operations and in the built environment over the last decade. And had the fortunate opportunity to work on pretty unique projects, including the latest one that we wrapped up with you. I think the best part about that I'd like to highlight today is really the focus on collaboration, integrated design approach, and the idea of transparency in everything that we do. And I feel like that project really helped highlight those very criteria and or models for how we do business going forward.
Yeah, I mean, so this was the Noe Valley, San Francisco Whole Foods market, which was a relatively new acquisition for Whole Foods, I believe. And I think there was some challenges with the building. Maybe just kind of run through what was done there and why the approach really worked really well for you guys.
Yeah, so to set the stage, the building was acquired by Whole Foods in 2009, or just prior to 2009. We opened as a Whole Foods, one of really the first small format stores for Whole Foods Market, and in, like I said, 2009 timeframe, in the midst of a very up and coming, but also came neighborhood in San Francisco. So we saw a lot of opportunity, and it became the neighborhood grocer. However, it was an old facility. We did some upgrades at the time. However, fast forward to 10 years later, there was a lot of opportunity to get in and do a deep retrofit of that store. The outcome, which is the most exciting bit, was a 44% overall energy savings, which is just tremendous. And if you start to add the refrigerant reduction measures that we put into play there, it starts to really look at the GHG opportunities as it relates to grocery stores, but also other stores that are using cooling systems, whether it be for space and or product.
Yeah, it's interesting. Although it wasn't necessarily the goal of the project, as as we work together, really the end result is that store. We got about as close as you possibly could to fully electrifying that grocery store, right? I mean, there was about a 90% savings in natural gas by doing some product switches. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's correct. So I think electrification or decarbonization has been an important conversation here recently. And like everything else, it's a balancing act to ensure that you're doing right for the building operations and the occupants that are going to be within that building, whether it be the customers or team members or employees, depending on what building you're talking about. It's also really important, again, that we get more progressive with how we're approaching the built environment and how we address the old way of doing things and really get beyond the status quo and really try our hardest through, like I said, collaboration and integrated design to drive down our overall GHG or carbon equivalent emissions. That being said, we didn't fully electrify this facility, but we reduced the gas usage in the facility through a few major changes, including removing a gas-fired rotisserie and a few other key components that were gas-fired appliances to drive the overall gas usage down by close to 90%, including adding high efficiency heat pumps for the cooling and space heating for the space. I think the one thing that I'd like to highlight is we constantly talk about electricity and efficiency there, but I think it is really important that we start to look at buildings more holistically. And part of looking at buildings holistically in the grocery space is looking at the refrigerant usage. If we were to extrapolate what we did at this particular facility, which was very simply just changing out the refrigerant gas, and extrapolate that across all of California's grocery stores, we could reduce our overall GHG emissions by 61%, which is just, it's low hanging fruit in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty incredible. And I'm going to get to what you're doing now, Mr. President. But let me let me ask you this. When you look at this one store and you think back, when you were with Whole Foods and you were looking at this overall project, how many stores does this Whole Foods actually operate in California? And how excited was everybody when they kind of saw how these measures could really kind of make impact across the board?
Yeah, I had the fortunate opportunity to work on a number of projects like this. I think the unique aspect of this project is that it was a collaborative effort amongst many of us, including you and team, to really highlight what's possible and do that with the CEC, or California Energy Commission, and publish the report, which will be coming out here shortly, which is really exciting because that really starts to open the door for other opportunities. And that's why I'm excited about what I'm working on now, is because I really want to offer what I offered to Whole Foods for many years to a broader audience, so that we can really start to tackle, like I said, the challenges that we face in the built environment, and really move into what we would describe as a utopian, sustainable built environment here at Livingstone. So that being said, I mean, we have just shy, or Whole Foods, I should say, I'm going to say we for a long time, but Whole Foods has just shy of 100 stores in California, over 500 wide. And if you start to look at grocery and high energy use intensity buildings across the US, or North America for that matter, there's just tremendous opportunity to extrapolate out what we did at the Noe Valley store to not only grocery and supermarket, but other like facilities. And I think a lot of that knowledge is very transferable.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge for folks that are listening in on this that this was a major team effort, and I just wanted to really acknowledge the efforts of the engineering firm Arup, who provided engineering on the project, the city of San Francisco, which is a great partner to us in the Department of Environment, in kind of making sure that lots of people were really connecting with the impact of what was happening in this project throughout the project, which is amazing. And then Whole Foods brought an incredible contractor team, including Brian Beitler, who was just a great leader in making sure this overall effort was really handled.
Yeah, no, I agree and would echo that wholeheartedly. I mean, between the Coolsys team, previously Source, and Brian Beitler and Arup, and your team, the city of San Francisco, LBNL, E2S, really all the partners. And I think what this highlights for me is that in order to achieve what we achieved there, in order to continue to replicate that and even go beyond what we did there, it really is going to require collaboration. There's no way that we're all going to be able to go at it alone to achieve, success in the form of sustainability and really changing what the built environment, and for that matter, how we do business into the future.
Right. So this experience and many others, I knew you had a really full plate, really must have shaped your thinking about kind of the future. And when you saw the opportunity to start to lead Livingstone here domestically, you must have some really exciting ideas in mind. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you're working on now and what Livingstone is all about.
Yeah, so Livingstone is a UK-based organization, really focused on engineering as their core competency, but looking at everything through the lens of sustainability. So kind of coining the term, and I don't know if we're coining it necessarily, but trying to coin the term as, sustainability technical services, essentially. And what that takes form in many different ways, through simple MEPR engineering, but like I said, through the lens of sustainability and trying to really drive efficiency, electrification, decarbonization, but also through, measurement and verification. I think it's really important that we measure what we do so that we can replicate and do better, but also through really figuring out and offering the opportunity to show how people interact with buildings. And I think a big piece of that is looking at connected buildings. So we're building out an asset kind of studio, an IoT bureau that we can help really pull buildings together so that folks that are occupying them can have better interactions with them. And I think given the current circumstances that we're living in, I think that's going to be critical. COVID is going to change the way we interact and exist in buildings going forward. And I think that's going to be really important. So it's kind of a whole fleet of different technical services focused on, like I said, really driving towards a carbon neutral or carbon negative environment.
Awesome. Someone who's kind of watching here had asked about kind of alternative fuels or biofuels. And I was wondering, both of your experience as a facility manager looking at literally 100 stores, and also as you are looking at leading a visionary consulting team, how do you see things like biofuels factoring into decarbonization?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I worked in transportation actually prior to joining Whole Foods, and biofuels have always been interesting. I think it depends on what the source of the biofuel actually is, right? And the conflict with potential food sources, obviously land mass. I think there's a lot of great opportunities in very renewable sources for the biofuels. I don't, in my mind, see that as a silver bullet solution. However, I think a lot of what we're getting at with any solutions that we may be talking about is really going to be, as I've said on many occasions, a kind of silver buckshot approach, right? You're not going to have a silver bullet, you're going to have silver buckshot, because you're going to have to pull a number of different solutions together in order to meet the objectives of carbon neutrality or the deep carbon reduction efforts that really all need to get behind.
Got it. So, as you had mentioned, whereas, this project we did together, which proves some pretty interesting points with emerging technology and electrification, et cetera, it was one single building. It's going to really be about the asset portfolio. I'm curious, let's say, in your new role, and as you're looking at this kind of as an overall industry, digital approaches to sustainable energy efficiency. Just wondering where you see metering, tracking, some of these emerging approaches really starting to help at the asset level.
Yep. I would say, as cliche as it sounds, you can't manage what you don't measure. And I think that's another really important piece in what we're trying to do, is having essentially managed services for buildings and looking at that through the sustainability lens. And that was what I was getting at with the asset, portfolio or studio that we're talking about. It's really about not just looking at the main systems within a facility, but getting down to each of the individual asset levels and starting to track and measure and improve upon each of those assets. And not just waiting till end of life, but really looking at the opportunities to drive GHG emissions down. And I think, we keep going back to that chicken rotisserie at Whole Foods, right? But there's just a tremendous opportunity. I mean, that was close to 70% of the gas use reduction that we were able to grasp at that store, maybe just shy of 70%, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, it's looking at specific assets, it's measuring, and then taking advantage of solutions that are out there. And I think, to your point around, innovative and emerging technologies, that's one piece of the puzzle. But I would say we don't want to necessarily say that is going to be the saving grace for what we do to, essentially solve our issues in the built environment. I think it really is a collection of solutions and off-the-shelf solutions that we bring together efficiently and effectively. And what Arup did with the genetic algorithm that they put together to combine all of the energy conservation measures to make sure that they work well together is really how we need to be thinking about things. It's, like I said, an integrated approach to driving off-the-shelf solutions while also pairing that with innovative technologies that are coming to the forefront.
So see the whole picture in more detail, make good decisions around where you can make the reductions, then hone in and make sure that it happens.
You nailed it.
And the term of the day for all of us is silver buckshot.
Silver buckshot,
I will be
exactly.
saying it all day long. Okay, well, we've actually just burned through 15 minutes talking about some really cool stuff. I'm really excited for you as leader of Livingstone Consulting. I'm personally looking forward to continuing to work with you and seeing everything you're doing. And we'll definitely be wanting to check in with you and seeing, where we can see Livingstone's work kind of in action as things start to emerge. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. Always great to take a break, and I look forward to continuing partnership with you and hopefully everyone on the line.